DBX Season 5 is a thing, let's not waste any time, let's get on to talking about what I think about all the episodes, and then we'll talk about Death Race as well, talk about my new top 15 least favourite, and just... let's just get on with it. I've got a lot of videos to work on with the limited time I have thanks to Corona Mania. Thor vs Vegeta YouTube edition. Fucking rubbish. Honestly, it's so atrocious I could dedicate a video to trashing it. There's borderline no fight. I can tell you they clash hammer and fist once, there's one Lucario gun, one hammer throw, Vegeta goes big Saiyan, and then there's a final clash where one of them dies. The frame rate shits the bed, the Thor model was birthed from the shit on the bed, and Vegeta looks fine. Easily gonna be in my top 10 worst. Thor vs Vegeta Rooster Teeth edition. Better, but still not that good. It's fine enough, but there's a little more to say than the frame rate is better, and the actual bit of fighting that they added was pretty good. The effects look much nicer when I'm not distracted by everything else going on. Generally, it's okay. Milan vs Cena. Decent, creative, had some good moments. Milan was clearly the Kingdom Hearts version here. Though the Milan sprites suck, but that's okay, they have no other choice with the smaller DBX budget. Lucina sprites, though, are fucking spectacular. It's a very creative episode, it makes good use of the environment, but my one question is, what the fuck is up with the environment? Doesn't really fit either of them. And no, that's not nitpicking. Imagine if they did the Enterprise with Captain Kirk versus the Millennium Falcon with Han Solo, but they were fighting on land during the medieval ages and using cannons and catapults as a weapon. People say, oh, it doesn't need to make sense, it's a DBX, they don't need to be in character. Bullshit! Absolute bullshit. What I ask is that they don't need voice acting, they don't need to be accurately represented in terms of how their stats compare, they don't need to use all their powers. All I want in a DBX and 1 Minute Melee, aside from just being generally good, is that they are in character. I want to see the characters represented, because if you're going to animate an episode, if you're going to animate an unresearched episode, I expect you to have wanted to animate. You chose to animate it because you wanted to do the fight. And this is a case where, yeah, you know, it's fine. I don't like the choice of environment, but clearly the animator wanted to do it. I mean, this wouldn't really make a good death battle. So, if someone is animating a DBX, I expect them to know enough about the characters to keep them in character. Imagine if they had a DBX with Goku, but he was a psychopathic murder person and it was played completely straight. Shantae vs Shovel Knight. I forgot this episode existed. It's fine enough, but it's nothing special. Nothing stands out except for the very obvious Shantae bias, with the ending having so much more to it. I'm tempted to give it a lower score, because I think Shovel Knight got almost no hits in the entire time. I think he gets like one combo, then spends the entire... He gets in one combo, then spends the rest of the fight getting his ass kicked. I think he hits her more in the ending where he dies than the one where he lives. Also, Shovel Knight's ending feels pretty rushed. He just sort of happens out of nowhere and that's it. Lucario vs Blaziken. Fucking spectacular. The amount of positives outweighs the negatives a good 50 to 1. The animation is fucking gorgeous. The animation is gorgeous, it's smooth as hell, there's so much detail in the background, and you can always tell there's just a bunch of chaotic good action. Nidoking showing up at the end was really cool, though I don't remember the Hyper Beam looking like the Darksaber. Choreography is solid, the amount of chaos is great, honestly, just... But everybody sucks this episode's dick, so let me be the one to blue ball it just a little bit. Butterfree doesn't use a single bug-type move the entire time. In fact, it uses nothing but flying-type moves, and somehow Blaziken doesn't kill it super easily, even though it's able to no-sell flying. You have a Blaziken that can no-sell flying-type moves. It should be able to obliterate a fucking Butterfree. People say that they like how Pokemon kept showing up, but what the fuck are you talking about? The only Pokemon that wasn't there from the very start of the fight is Nidoking. What do you mean Pokemon kept showing up? The only Pokemon that showed up after the fact was Nidoking. The ending was also fine, but nothing special. I am glad it went back to Lucario vs Blaziken at the end, but there's no Mega Evolution, which makes a little bit of sense in the context of a wild Lucario, but imagine, right, you've got Lucario buffed by a Z Crystal, you got Lucario buffed by a Z Crystal, and then you have the trainer Mega Evolving Blaziken, so it makes sense that Blaziken's able to hold his own, even though Lucario just murked everyone else. Goku vs Gon. I don't remember anything about this episode except that I didn't hate it or love it. Completely neutral on it. It's a good and fun episode and all, but nothing really happened that stands out to me. But at the same time, there's nothing really that stands out that's wrong to me. Why is it above a 5 despite my neutrality? Because Goku kills Gon Monster Carrot style, and which is awesome. Ben 10 vs Danny Phantom. Okay. I know some people love this episode, and that's fine. That's all good. Let's talk about the positives. It has some creative moments. I like the fact that Ben actively counters Danny's attacks, absorbing and redirecting lasers, turning to Raph for physical contact, using Echo Echo to counter the Ghostly Whale. It's great. Another up is that it uses more aliens in the death battle. Death Battle had XLR8, Forearms, Heat Blast, Grey Matter, Waybig, and Alien X, though XLR8 and Grey Matter did literally nothing, while Forearms and Heat Blast did very little too, but at least they did something. DBX, however, has Big Chill, Chromastone, Raph, Alien X, Nanomech, and Echo Echo. So in total it's the same, but in Death Battle only 3 of these aliens actually fight Hal, while in DBX the only one that doesn't fight Danny is Alien X, and even then, X is important for Ben's victory in the end, so technically they all did. And yeah, I love the sequence with Nanomech. This legitimately looks like it could be in a Death Battle. However, I have some problems aesthetically. First off, Ben himself looks atrocious. He just looks really off. And secondly, some of the aliens look weird. Like, Chromastone floating here looks off to me. I also dislike that as someone who's not a Ben 10 fan and only recognize a few of these, like Chromastone and Alien X and Wrath to an extent, I had no clue what Nanomech was. And personally, I did not know that Nanomech was only a couple centimeters tall, because this shot does not really convey it. Yes, on screen it's small, however everything else we see is in the background. We have no context as to how small it is. So I thought this was a cool ass fight when Nanomech was in the background and Danny was in the foreground, and they were shooting at each other from like background to foreground. However, now that I know Nanomech is that tall, he's actually directly in front of Danny, and I couldn't tell because it's not really conveyed well. Also, Wrath falling here looks fucking awful. And I'm disappointed in the lack of Ghost Freak, because he and Danny would have made for an interesting battle. Finally, the ending kind of blows me. It's literally Doctor Strange versus Dr. Fate, you know, one bloke jumps into the other guy's body, finds an entire world that he didn't expect, then the guy that he jumped into shows up with 2 helpers that erase him from reality. Danny doesn't even give a single fuck. It just really underwhelms me, and it's better than Ben just becoming Alien X and erasing him normally, but if they had just left X here and had Ben use different aliens to take out Danny, that would have been cool. Say Danny tries to jump into him, but he counters with Ghost Freak, and they have an intangibility fight flying straight through solid matter and shit, and Ben kills Danny during that. Or say Danny goes for the Jake Long finisher, but Feedback grabs it all and unleashes it back to obliterate Danny. Yeah, Chromastone did that, but Chromastone absorbed a little blast and not a giant laser. I've talked more about this than I wanted, and it's slowed the pace of the video. Moving on. Kenshin vs. Law. Very slow, very boring to me, but my opinion is biased. I am one of the very few people, apparently, who already watched the episode over a year ago when it was available free on the internet. Like, I thought it was really slow back then, but it's not awful, but like, it's nothing worth talking about to me. Yang vs. Bakugo. Let's start positive. At least they're not bastardized character-wise. The choreography is fine. I can see them fighting like this, but it lacks Bakugo's signature flying all over the place style. That only happens a couple times. And the ending actually looks alright, with him blasting into the air, then unpinning and killing Yang. Okay, that's it. The episode looks like shit. It's the reverse of the 1 minute melee, but not as bad in the bad parts. 1 minute melee heavily fucked with the characters, but the choreography was not that great. However, it's hidden by the quality of the animation. In the same way, DBX got their characters, well, it's hard to say right because they didn't really talk at all, but the choreography that's alright is hidden by the most awful animation quality. It looks like shit. I mean, these Bakugo sprites are terrible. There's really no excuse considering 1 minute melee has an even lower budget than DBX, and it has beautiful Bakugo sprites. These look amazing. These look like they hired Animation Rewind to... No, I can't even say that. Animation Rewind, who's not as bad as most people say in my opinion, Animation Rewind's fine. You know, he's fine enough. This is like they hired 2015 Animation Rewind to draw for them. That's how bad it looks. Bakugo looks like shit, and not just because, say, his eye is not lined up with his socket and his face looks all wrong, but he's also drawn in only 2 positions, looking straight forward and looking straight to the side. See how Yang is on an angle? Like, she's not completely side profile to the viewer. This is because in fighting games, characters are always angled a certain degree so you can see a good profile, not just a straight silhouette. The character is not standing completely side onto the camera, nor are they standing completely straight onto the character. They're on an angle. Bakugo's not. Fucking just... Oh, I hate how bad this looks. It's awful. It's easily the worst looking sprite episode of the whole series. I hate to say this, given the 1 minute melee got on my shit list, but if you want a good fight with this pretty bad matchup, watch the 1 minute melee. Skip to the fight, skip the ending. Yes, Yang wins, bothers me as a Bakugo fan, but It's a non-researched fight. That part doesn't bother me that much. Oh, and Yang's ending is actually worse than Bakugo's. She just punches him a few times and then yonks him out of the arena. XWing versus Arwing. So bland. I have nothing. It's so boring. And nothing stands out whatsoever that I could call interesting or bad. It's just, I have no opinion. The only thing that really is bad is the atrociously rendered background, which I literally thought it was 2D when I first saw it. Like, what? It's nothing. Superman vs. Saitama. Once again, a completely bland, boring fight. For a finale, it really underwhelmed. Literally, all that happens is Saitama punches Superman. There's a big explosion fist clash. Then Superman yonks Saitama to the ground. Rapid fire fists on Superman. Then Superman dies. There's nothing memorable here. There's nothing like Superman walking through the Kamehameha or anything. Nothing even as cool as, I don't know, Hulk's thunderclap on Doomsday, which I'm only thinking of because Doomsday was in it. It just ends out of nowhere. Both endings end out of nowhere. I think the best part is that Kagi has a pretty good Saitama voice, and, you know, Devil Artemis Superman is fine, but I can't help but imagine selling this plays and how much funnier that'd be. Probably because it already happened. And it was much better. So how does this season affect my top 15 worst? Well, first off, I need to consider the 3 episodes I brought up in my best DBX episodes that I disliked. Then I have to consider some that I've changed opinions on. And then there's Link vs. Meta Knight. Okay, like Ruby vs. Ragnar and Tifa vs. Chun, it has one character shit-stomp the other, but this one's worse. Link lands literally 0 hits. However, in defense of that episode, Meta Knight also lands only 2 hits. The difference here is that in Ruby vs. Ragnar and Chun vs. Tifa, Ruby and Chun completely dominate. They seriously land 1,000,000 hits. Meta Knight, however, only lands 2. He punches Link once, creates a tornado, and kills him with the first sword slash of the entire fight that hits. This fight is literally if both of their swords would cut, regardless of stats. Neither of them get hit with a sword outside of the final hit. It does not deserve to be on the worst list. On paper, it sounds worse, but Link is very competent in this fight. Link actively counters everything. The only reason Link loses is because he loses his sword, and Meta Knight takes advantage of that to win. It's not that bad. Alright, now, ignoring those 3 that I have to add, let's rearrange my top 15 worst, getting rid of the whatever bottom 3 happen to be there. Alucard vs. Spawn is still number 1, but this time number 2 is Ruby vs. Ragnar. This moved up because I've heard from multiple sources that the animator actually wanted to be creative. They wanted to have Ragnar win, but more importantly, they wanted to do what they wanted, make it a real fight. However, the animator was forced into making it a Ruby win. Now, I don't know if this is true, but it's what I've heard, and if it is true, that goes against what I like. I like animators being free to do what they want. This is just too corporate. Oh, but Nemesis, aren't your criticisms restraining freedom? No, Kermit. No. I'm criticizing the choices made because the creator was free to make them and open to do as they wanted. Criticism is to help people improve, so others can see the mistakes that some people make and consider that when they do their own things. Let's say somebody watches a video of mine and I say Chun-Li vs. Tifa is terrible because Tifa gets lol stomped and does nothing. A new animator could see my video and think, hey, I should avoid doing that in the future, or, hey, if I have a lol stomp, I should play it for a joke. Criticism is there to help people. I don't judge the animators for making the choices, I judge the choices they make while they're free to make them. And if I ever convey my words as I'm judging the animators themselves as people, then I apologize. That is not my intent, but sometimes when you're making a video, you can often mix up how you want to convey your feelings. You can convey things wrong, and that's a mistake. People make those. You can criticize me for making that mistake myself, but this episode, however, I'm criticizing the fact that the animator was not free. I disagree with how it was made inherently. It is possible this is wrong. The animator could show up right now and say, actually, that did not happen at all, and I also do not appreciate you making fun of my animation. More like Nemesis Bad Reich. But, you know, at least the animation is a fight, unlike Alucard vs. Spawn. 3 is Kenshiro vs. Saitama. It's just as bad as Mikasa vs. Spider-Man in retrospect, but at least Mikasa vs. Spider-Man actually has the characters look like the characters. Number 4, Trish vs. Jean. They look like shit. The only reason it's here and not in the same spot and not in the spot Kenshiro vs. Saitama is because Kenshiro vs. Saitama has that Kenshiro model. 5 is Spider-Man vs. Mikasa. 6 is Frieza vs. Mewtwo, which is just really shit and really boring. 7 is Bomberman vs. Mega Man. The character bastardization is strong, but at least it doesn't look as bad as the prior ones. It has some cool shots. Number 8 is Sasuke vs. Hiei. It's still bad, but honestly, the actual fight part isn't awful. I could see how some might find it funny. Number 9 is SBO vs. Greninja. It's really slow and bad. Number 10 is Wolverine vs. 100 Barakas. 11 is Dante vs. Kratos. 12 is 2 vs. Noctis. Now, what about the 3 I brought up? Where do they go? Well, Chun-Li vs. Tifa takes the new number 6 spot. Luffy vs. Fantastic takes the new number 9 spot. And Hulk vs. Juggernaut takes the new number 12 spot. Now for the episodes of DBX that made the worst list from the new season. It's Yang vs. Bakugo and the original Thor vs. Vegeta. Which, yes, means that Dante vs. Kratos and 2B vs. Noctis are being knocked off the list. Here you go. Yang vs. Bakugo takes the number 9 spot. That's because it looks just so bad. It's probably just as bad as Frieza vs. Mewtwo, but it's above because Frieza vs. Mewtwo had less substance. And Thor vs. Vegeta YouTube legitimately looks worse than Trish vs. Like, it doesn't look okay. And Thor vs. Vegeta is in the same category as fucking terrible as Spider-Man vs. Mikasa and Trish vs. Jean. And this is purely because of the issues with the frame rate and stuff. It's not Devil Artemis's fault. It's not the SFM team's fault, okay? But it is atrocious. And like Kenshiro vs. Saitama, it has a model that just looks awful. However, that's okay, it's not as bad. It doesn't look as bad as Kenshiro vs. Saitama. I'll be honest. The gap between 3, 4, and 5 is very close. But this is where I'd put it. Anyway, Death Race time. Episode 1. Pretty decent start. The models for Adam and Bert are cursed, but that kind of fits their scene, so I don't mind. The Bat Nuke was alright. The use of the Bat Pod was actually quite clever, even if it didn't lead anywhere. And the actual race part felt more integrated into the choreography while balanced with fighting than the others. The mix of racing and fighting is better than some other episodes. Episode 2. Speaking of which, despite having my favourite character in fictional history in this episode, it disappointed me. First off, that fucking Prime voice, man. It sounds like an oxymoronic drowning Admiral Akbar. Secondly, the race part feels very second fiddle. Lightning, who's criminally underused here, is the only one who feels like he's racing. The flying car, as expected, is just there. It doesn't feel like it's going for it. Thomas is also just there. The only character doing anything in this episode is Optimus, and he's acting completely out of character, and it's completely fight-based what he's doing. There's almost no race, but a lot of death. Little of anything I found funny too. The only thing I actually liked was the fact that Harry Potter was screaming, and the Harry Potter jokes were funny. Lightning also should have said more than just ka-chow. There's more than that meme. There's I am speed. Episode 3. This was fine. Kit was great. Loved Kit in this episode, but for the most part, I was bored. Bond didn't do much Bond stuff. The Interceptor was cucked so hard that it didn't even show up in the title. And Chief not riding with Arbiter or fucking Locke, who is not that bad, but it just makes me sad. At least if it was like Frederick from the Fall of Reach book or something, that'd be a nice bit of fan service. I mean, that was a good book, but I don't know much from it. I want to give it another read, but I don't know where my copy's gone. Anyway, aside from Kit, the other 3 didn't have much happening. And the moment the Warthog flipped, I knew that it would win. The previous episodes didn't telegraph the winner and how they win as much. Like, you knew that Adam and Optimus would win, literally right before they did win. While I knew how the Warthog would win right here, and there's still a bit of time left. Bond and the Interceptor really didn't add much. More so than any other episode, this one makes Wiz and Boomstick a problem to me. Because they sort of ruin the pace. Like, this episode would be much more exciting without the cuts to Wiz and Boomstick. The only exceptions being the Kit moments, of course. Because these interactions with them are fantastic. However, it is my least favourite episode. It feels like nothing happened. The minefield, the helicopters, and the Boomstick machine all felt like they added literally nothing. I guess you could say it led up to Boomstick getting frustrated and dropping the tracks, but that was a really lazy final obstacle. And honestly, the landmines could have easily launched Bond and the Interceptor off the track to achieve the same effect. Speaking of the landmines, the gag with Wiz and Boomstick is so drawn out and unfunny legitimately, I skip it whenever I watch the episode because it takes so long for the get back to the actual race when they're talking. And yeah, honestly, back what I was saying, the helicopter could have taken that kit. I get that some found the Warthogs win funny, but it was so predictable, and it wasn't intentionally predictable as a form of anti-humor. But, you know, I also don't like that Kit is visible in the back when Wiz gets taken over, because it makes it look like Kit's body is fine, which makes no sense. His body should be destroyed. Should have just had the Chiefs doing their thing still, or maybe an Arbiter cameo. Come on, Devil Artemis. But I do like that Kit's smiling when Boomstick's just okay with Wiz being taken over and says they should go blow shit up. Episode 4. This episode was also just fine. Nothing special, because I'm honestly disappointed by how you have 6 combatants, and almost none of them, there was less interaction than any other episode. Like, as expected, the DeLorean vanished for the whole thing, but the Scout Trooper was also taken out immediately, okay, and Tak was barely in it. It felt like a 3-person race, and even then, Sonic was out of the race for the majority. It was almost entirely Captain Falcon and Mario, and by entirely, I mean, the race was very little. It was just Boost Fire, Bullet Bill, Pinball, Cap saves Mario, Falcon dies, and then Sonic and Mario kill each other. Then Tak wins. There wasn't much of anything happening at all. And yeah, I predicted the winner. I predicted Tak winning. I predicted the DeLorean going back in time and disappointing me with no Green Lantern cameo. I predicted that Falcon would get cheated out of a victory that he really deserved. And I predicted the Blue Shell being involved, even though the Blue Shell isn't funny anymore. There were no surprises aside from like the finger from Mario, which I did get a chuckle from, and that's your wrap. I mean, this race had the least substance in it of all death races, and that's kind of surprising. With 6 characters, the fact that 2 characters make up the majority of the race part is a shock. So what score do I give Death Race? Like a 6 or a 7 out of 10? None of these episodes are an 8 or up out of 10. They're all just sort of there. If Death Race didn't come back, I wouldn't be too sad. If it did, I wouldn't be against it. I'd love to see one of these just written by Devil Artemis, like selling Kerbert in a swagmobile or something in a death race. That would be amazing. I would love that. And the chaos that Devil Artemis could sow if he was in the writer's seat, if he was in the helm. But honestly, Death Race was kind of underwhelming, and I don't want to be that guy. Like, I'm already the Ruby hater because I criticize a show I like. I don't want to criticize Death Battle that much too. I mean, I've done it in the past, but I don't want to be that guy. So yeah, that's my video on the newest season of DBX and the first season of Death Race. Maybe only season. We'll just have to wait and see, Zen. If you guys agreed, that was great. It's great. If you disagreed, that's also great. Everyone has a right to their opinion. And that's all. I guess I'll leave you on a profound quote from Jesus. Don't be a dick.